Riot might be on vacation this week, but that didn't stop them from dropping over 20 new cards, making this one of the largest updates since the very first day of spoiler season. So we're going to go through all the new cards really quickly, except for the Proving Grounds, which will be another video, talk about what is hot or not, and give our first impressions on each of the cards. So let's dive in. So first and foremost, we do have to get a little bit of a disclaimer out of the way that there was two different cycles of cards that, well, are not all that interesting, but I still want to make sure that we call them out. So first and foremost, we have a Porro Cycle, which, yes, we are missing a few, so I'm sure that we're going to get a few of them in the following days, maybe on Wednesday or Friday. But we have Pouty Porro with Deflect, Stalwart Porro with Shield, Daring Porro with Assault, and Mystic Porro with Vision. Vision kind of being the odd one there for purple, but hey, we take it. And all the same kind of across the board. These are just nice low-costed units to include in a variety of decks. Because they only cost 2 energy, you can play them on your first turn, and they're pretty okay for what they want to be doing. I know that the red version for Deflect might be a little bit lower rated compared to the rest of these, but overall, pretty solid for what they are and what they want to be doing. And I'm really hoping that we'll see some type of Porro payoff maybe in the future. Maybe the return of the Porro King, we'll have to wait and see, but still really cool to see Riot bring back this cycle. And then the other section that I don't really want to spend too much time talking about is that we did get some vanillas in the set. This is really important for more of the draftability or limited side of the game for those that like playing either draft or sealed variations. I am not the biggest fan in the world, so this is just kind of all meh to me, and that's fine. The only one that I'll add a caveat to is that if you want to build like a budget version of Volibear, Mountain Drake being a dragon plus going with the Overseer that we have, sure, it gets a cheaper cost. It's 10 might, which is a ton, so I do like the option of having a very on-theme, plays very well with that legend budget option at being only an uncommon, but overall these are really nothing to write home about. Maybe if there is some gaps in certain decks that people are building, you might include one of these, but with how large the first set is and plus the Proving Ground cards that do seem a little bit better than the devs might have led us on to believe initially, in my opinion, I think we won't really find a room for these cards other than, again, maybe Mountain Drake if you want to do something with Volibear. So getting that out of the way, let's talk about the actual cards, and I've broken this down by each of the various domains, and they are literally just in set order as they were revealed on the website, because I want to make sure I didn't miss anything. So we're going to go through all the new domains as well as new battlefields at the end, which is very exciting. So starting off with Mind, we have a 5 energy Falling Comet, which is a action spell to deal 6 to a unit at a battlefield. Mind was really missing some type of removal or otherwise interaction. You know, we had the culling side of Order, and we also had the damage pinged effects based on Fury, but at least for Kaisa and some more of the control deck options, it really felt like we were missing a couple cards. So between Falling Comet and Singularity, which is a 6 energy 2 power spell that deals 6 damage up to 2 units, both of these are very welcomed additions. So I'm very excited to see both these rounding out the Kaisa deck. And also, and again, I'm really trying to save the Proving Grounds for the Proving Ground video because that is a much larger discussion, but both of these are also really nice for Lux, and that's all I'll say right now. So I am very happy to see both of these, and I'm sure 100% both these will find a home. However, for me personally, and I might just be super high on the Teemo deck overall, but the Lecturing Yordle was actually my key pick from the 3 of these because it is a 3 energy card that you can recycle with the pack to just draw a card every turn. Because it has tank, it's also going to help get in the way of some of your other hidden style of cards that you want to save or make sure that they can get out of the way from. So Lecturing Yordle being able to recycle itself, get you extra draw. Remember, if you control the battlefield, you can in a turn play this, pick it up, play it again off of the backpack and play it directly to the battlefield. So you are still protecting your units at that location. So this is one that I'm very curious to see how it all comes together. And I know a lot of people might be comparing this to Sentry. However, the thing to note is drawing the card immediately is always going to be better than drawing the card later. And especially because this is one of the first cards that we can really start to interact with and abuse ultimately the pack gear. This is very exciting to see in those types of blue-purple lists specifically. Now, keep in mind that this will just probably be a good card in general for all of the blue decks because it is a low energy unit that is going to replace itself, allow us to get some type of might on the board. And again, if we do have other ways to loop it back, or we just get other kind of graveyard-based recursion like we do have, again, out of the purple side, if we just really need to dig for a couple cards, this is what's going to help do that. Again, a key challenge for control style of decks is making sure you do not run out of cards or cycle through enough cards to make sure you see those key pieces. So for those reasons, Lecturing Yordle is going to get the MVP of mine for me personally for the day, although I think overall all three of these are going to be extremely playable and definitely see a lot of play. Now, moving on to body, we had some really interesting cards kind of across the board, and let's just throw it out there. Shout out to Warwick. It is Warwick Day, all things considered, but starting with Cannon Barrage, a 2 energy, 1 power reaction spell. Deal 2 to all enemy units in combat. There's a couple combinations that you can really pull together with this. Kog'Maw, if you want to get a little extra damage. Warwick, as I mentioned, I'm going to try not to repeat that too much, is really the biggest winner here. But otherwise, if you just need a little extra chip damage or are trying to battle against a battlefield of all tokens, then Cannon Barrage can just be that very quick clear that your opponent might not have been suspecting. So this is a very strong card for what it wants to be doing. I definitely see this finding a home in the near future. But I think one of the key things we'll have to wait and see is how good is Warwick in the meta overall and how decks really come together to utilize the most out of that. Up next is Confront, a 2 energy spell, action speed. Units you play this turn enter ready and draw 1. This is going to be insane in a lot of different areas, but just to speak at this from a high level, the fact that it draws, why does it replace itself? Why on earth would this type of card need the effect to also draw 1 as you play it? Sure, all right, we'll just take that for what it is. However, this does line itself well into a couple of different areas. If you are playing a more ramp style of deck and you have the extra runes to spend and then play a bigger threat, it allows you to get your tempo back onto the battlefield and conquer back what your opponent was trying to hold when they might not be expecting it. On the other side of this, if you are playing a more aggressive strategy, or maybe you're trying to lean in on Misfortune's ganking ability, this allows you as a aggro deck or Lord of the Ground deck in the late game to set up a turn where you're now able to ready multiple threats and have more might combinations than your opponent was ultimately suspecting. So this by itself is going to be a very versatile card, and we'll have to wait to see where it ends up in terms of who gets the most use out of it. But I know for a fact I will lose to this card a ton in the future. Up next from there, we have Crackshot Corsair. Welcome back, 3 energy, 3 might. When I attack, deal 1 to an enemy unit here. Now, this only does it to a single enemy, keep in mind, so it's not as good as we were relying on the full Warwick combo, but still the 2 of them is going to take out your biggest threat from your opponent's side that you have to worry about. Corsair is also just great if you need a little extra trade up or extra ping, and of course, multiple of these will stick together to get you a 2 damage ping before you go to the showdown and compare defensive totals. So this gives you a little bit of extra reach where you ultimately want it. I will say the more low to the ground style for body is getting a little bit competitive in terms of the various cards that we want to be using, but I absolutely can see a home for this type of card in the future, even if it is a bit more limited, but we'll have to wait and see what the full 2 and 3 costed cards turn out to be, because this is one that can combo very well, as I mentioned, with Warwick and giving you kind of that auto defeat ability, but also does find itself very nicely into some other mechanics if we are able to get, multiple movements in a turn to get extra damage on various bases. There's a lot of cheeky things you can do with this, but we have to wait and see, how much more value we can get out of first mate out of body, because truly this still is the key card for the body domain in terms of extra shenanigans that you can pull off. And then last but not least, we have Dune Drake, which is a 5 energy, 5 might, so does hit mighty, which is really important. When I attack, give me +2 might if there is a ready enemy unit here. This is a wonderful card for the Volibear deck, because not only is it going, well, it's a dragon, right? We got to check that off the list. It's a dragon, so it works with the Overseer. It is 5 might, so it's going to count for your mighty triggers when you really need them to count. It also gives you access to 5 might for the removal spell. It also has the option here that if your opponent is trying to defend, you are going to be able to bring this up to 7 might. And that's going to be very strong into the various control style of decks or calm style of decks that want to try to get just enough might to survive. But 7 might for 5 energy is going to be very difficult for them to interact with. Now, there is some cool stuff if they try to do meditation and figuring out where that trigger is going to line up as these spells resolve. If they are tapped down like a Lee Sin or something because they just wanted to apply the buff, there's other things that might play a role here, but we have to wait and see what type of other, resting your stuff as a reaction that you ultimately get and how that plays out here. But against every other deck that's out there for Volibear, getting a 7 might swing in the early game so that you can take one of those battlefields and hold it so your opponent doesn't get too far ahead is going to be very, very nice. Moving on to Chaos, we got 3 new cards and 2 similar ones, to be fair. But up first, we have Morbid Return, a 2 energy action spell. Return a unit from the trash to your hand. This is one of those things that I just always love recursion. Of course, we have the Cemetery Dog, which allows us to just get it back while also including a Might Body. But this is one that can be interesting in the future, depending on what other type of, graveyard and spell recursion counts that we ultimately care about. So one that doesn't quite have a home yet, in my opinion. I'd rather just be able to play the Cemetery unit when we really need it to get a card back. But we'll have to wait and see, again, what other type of graveyard type interaction we ultimately get that could find a spot for this style of card, as well as cards in the future that just might care about our overall spell count. Moving on from there, we have Sai Scout, a 6 energy, 5 might unit. It has vision, so of course you get to look at the top deck, and then you can play it directly to a open battlefield. This one is quite scary because we've already seen the Purple Misfortune and some of the other, purple-orange decks coming together that just attack directly into a battlefield to get an extra point out of nowhere. This is effectively haste in that regard from other card games because you are able to get that point immediately. And if your opponent tries to, split their efforts too much into one battlefield and you're able to take the scout to the other one and then push up your entire board into the one they were trying to defend, suddenly you can get that 8th point when your opponent might not have been expecting it. So very curious to see how this lines up because we also have the Sneaky Deckhand, a 3 energy, 2 might with a similar ability. And again, love the flavor text here because it is very similar to what Misfortune wants to be doing. So this one is a little bit up in the air for me, right? Morbid Return doesn't feel like it has an exact place just yet. We'll have to wait and see again if more spell count matters, if there's other criteria for getting cards back off of a spell that, again, may or may not matter in the future. And then the, pseudo haste style of cards being able to play directly to an open battlefield. There is most likely going to be a purple-orange, more hasty style of deck where I think that these can find a home. But the challenge here, of course, is that with the Scout, you don't want to be running too many copies of them because you could always just run the Purple Misfortune or Chaos Misfortune in your champion slot and then have access to that if you just really need to get that extra point when your opponent might not suspect it. So very curious, again, to see where these end up. I think both the effects are quite strong for what they want to be doing, but without further context of knowing how these decks are really going to shape up, because, again, we still have a lot of spoilers to go at the end of the day, to be fair, but I'm very excited to see what this more haste style strategy looks like. And then last but not least, we have Order before we go into the battlefields, with back-to-back being a 3 energy reaction spell. Give 2 friendly units +2 might this turn. Just a fantastic card for the more control style of decks, especially if you have like Shen into this or something. Is just going to be a massive might swing that your opponent is not going to be able to claw back from. Of course, we're going to have to wait and see what is the right pairings of various might boosting effects, but also if you are trying to just get ahead, right? Mainly you would think this card is more defensive action, but if you are trying to be more aggressive with Order and you just need a little bit of a boost, a 4 might swing out of a single card, while it does take 3 energy, which is a little high, can be just enough to get over that hump that your opponent is trying to put in front of you and slow you down from being aggressive. So I do like this card from a both reactive and proactive situation, that I think it is going to be at least a little bit better. Or again, from at least the lineup that we have here, it's my favorite card from Order that we got today, just due to its flexibility. Up next, we have Petty Officer, a 5 energy, 5 might unit with Assault +1. Not a lot to say. This is one that I'll very much just like, meh. We'll have to wait and see what the deck lists ultimately look like. Yes, it goes up to 6 might on attack, which is nice and does help break some might thresholds that we care about. Can be nice as a top-end option for just giving a larger might unit. But there's also just a lot of other cards that we likely want to play in the 5 or even 6 energy spot that takes a highlight over this. But again, one that, to me, probably speaks more to the limited format side of things. But again, we'll have to wait and see. But for right now, not really that impressed with where Petty Officer sits, especially not compared to its Legends of Runeterra form initially. Then up next, we have Noxian Drummer, a 3 energy, 3 might unit. When I move to a battlefield, play a 1 might recruit unit token here, meaning yes, at the battlefield. And this one is going to be very, very interesting because we have a few cards already that care about the number of recruits. Obviously, Victor in this more token spam style of build. It's just a great way to get extra recruits per turn. Maybe you're trying to lean up to that Grand Plaza turn. Maybe you're trying to use the signature spell for a big might swing when your opponent might not be suspecting it. Or if you're trying to go into the Darius token strategy, getting extra of those recruits just for wanting to attack into a base. And then as you might have seen in our Darius gameplay, you want to retreat it so that it's protected. This plays well into that strategy of leading up to the yellow Darius's game plan of giving your entire field the extra might and doing that one big conquer at the very end. So this is a very interesting one in terms of I could see it potentially going in a few different directions. It really is kind of a toss-up between this and back-to-back for me personally. I did want to see more of the reaction might stuff out of order, so that's probably why I give it to back-to-back in this situation. But Noxian Drummer is a very strong effect that I'm expecting to see line up quite well if someone can crack the code behind a either all-in Victor token strategy or, again, the yellow Darius that we've seen previously. I think both those cards are very excited to see Noxian Drummer, but we'll have to just wait to see those lists refined a little bit more. And then last but not least, we got some new battlefields. So the first one is Fortified Position. When you defend here, choose a unit, it gains shield +2. This is insane for Ahri. I've kind of alluded to this a few times already, and now that we're getting more of the battlefields, I'll probably do like a battlefield deep dive on terms of, you know, what is legend advantage, what is battlefield neutral, what is battlefield disadvantage. There's a lot more planning because Riftbound does require you to take 3 battlefields, but in terms of what is the best battlefield for the Ahri deck, shocker, it's going to be this because it plays in so well of your strategy of trying to hold down a battlefield. And then Ahri is going to give you the legend ability, which is going to shrink something by initial might. So just off this battlefield and Ahri's legend ability, that is going to be a 3 might swing, not even counting the blue Ahri, which we've talked about a lot in the past, which is going to make it extremely difficult for your opponent to just walk into this battlefield and conquer it, that they'll probably have to spend some resources pre-combat to remove a couple of those cards so you don't get the full value out of the defensive pick. Up next, we have Reckoner's Arena, that when you hold here, activate the Conquer effect of units here. I love this one just from a future design point shenanigans, right? The two biggest ones, obviously, right now are going to be Kai'Sa and Qiyana. And sure, right, those are just great. Either free spells, free extra card draw, not much to write home other than, yeah, those are obviously very good. But this does line itself up quite well to a new mini game that you get to play with your opponent if you both have fairly strong win conquer effects and trying to hold Reckoner's Arena. I definitely see this card on a key turn. If your opponent isn't able to interrupt you and you have that Kai'Sa who's just going to get another free spell and go remove something on another battlefield, this is going to feel crazy, crazy strong. Or again, I'm happy just to have Qiyana here, which is going to say, oh, activate the conquer effect of units. Okay, I'll draw 2. Why not, right? I have 2 of these units. Set is keeping them around. I'm drawing 3 cards a turn now. What? Yeah, obviously that's going to be insanely strong. So this one, I am very curious to see what other units that we get. I think it's already very strong. If you have Qiyana in your deck, or if you're playing the blue Kai'Sa, since we don't know what red Kai'Sa does yet, this just feels like it's going to be like, you need this battlefield because you get so much more advantage with those 2 cards than anything else in the current spoiled meta. So I'm very curious to see where this ends up, but at least for now, for the Kai'Sa deck, for the set deck, Reckoner's Arena, we love to see it. And then lastly, Start to Peak. When you hold here, you may channel 1 rune exhausted. This one's a little bit weird because the channeling a rune definitely wants to be more of like the Ram strategy, but this is also just a great way to potentially punish your opponent for having a later start, and then you are the one that gets the extra runes because you're lower to the ground and being aggressive. And then also, if maybe you have a little bit higher of a power cost, by getting that extra rune a turn, the power costs are not going to feel as bad. So this one's pretty nice. I'm very excited to see where it goes. Now, keep in mind, it is activate, then hold the scoring, if I remember correctly, so you won't get that extra rune, but this is still one that you're happy to see because it allows you to, play into the strategy of ramping up and not having your power effects hurt as bad. But this is definitely one that, as a ramp deck and as a ramp enjoyer for Volibear, I would love to find a way to get extra runes where possible, but I think this one you're just going to be a little bit farther behind than you would like to be, so I don't think you can include it in that list. There are some other ones, of course, that just start the game with an extra rune, which we're happy about, but I'm very curious to see, where the control decks land on this one in particular, because you are going to want the extra pieces to go ahead. So maybe more like a Teemo who doesn't have as high of a power cost, but wants to start churning through their runes and getting to those bigger mana swing turns, right? That could be really important, but for right now, have to wait and see, but I think I'm very excited to see where it ends up. But this one for me, fortified position, I think is definitely the best one out of the pick, and maybe one of the best battlefields that we've seen so far for what it allows or enables for a very specific deck. But Reckoner's Arena, from a flavor value shenanigans standpoint, I think overall is going to be my favorite battlefield because getting an extra Kaisa trigger is going to be insane. And then Kiana, as I mentioned, just drawing extra cards, man. I don't know what more I need to say about that. Yes, I'll gladly draw 3 cards in a turn. Why not? So that's all for today's video. I'll do a different recap for all of the spoilers in the Proving Grounds that we also just got. I think there's a lot more that I still need to digest and go into because I do think they're a little bit better than what admittedly a lot of us might have been expecting. So we might be running into another one-piece starter deck situation. Hopefully not, but you never know. We'll have to wait and see. But definitely let me know down below what is your favorite card from today's reveals, and we'll look forward to another gameplay video as soon as I have time to record one. So until next time, my friends, stay safe, stay hydrated, and we'll see you in the next video. Cheers.